on top of all that, Nsima and I have been messing around with just like a bunch of weird stuff in the gym. A lot of it has to do with some of the functional pattern stuff that I've been doing. And I do highly recommend for people to check out Functional Patterns website and we talked about myofascial release. They have a whole program that shows you everything on myofascial release, explains why it works, explains why maybe some people haven't had as much success with just stretching, and how you can kind of incorporate some myofascial release along with other movement patterns to be more mobile. But a lot of the stuff that we've been playing around with now is just, it's respective to running, jumping, throwing. And when we're doing some stuff in the gym with cables, you go to do like a twisting move with a cable, and now you're kind of recognizing like, oh my God, I got to stabilize so much on this other foot that the calf is firing, the shin is firing, the toes are firing. And yeah, we could say the same thing about a bench press. You see someone bench press, yeah, of course everything's moving around, but you're not standing. Like there's no weight, it's not weight bearing.
You know my story? Some of what Mark's talking about is in a story that, yeah.
And one of the brilliant things about functional patterns is in some of their movements, they are a lot of times moving like forward in a movement or sometimes backwards. Like there's more movement in it than just a regular gym lift. That's why they even created some of their own cable columns because of the amount of movement that you can get. And I'm not saying that, some of these things are the only way to get and achieve some of these things, because you can achieve a lot of this stuff by running and jumping and throwing. And you could achieve some of these things by simply just putting some good thought into it. But you see Nsima is like doing this row here, and we're trying to do like multiple things at one time. We got some rotational going on where you're getting the ribs to move. But then you can also play with where the shoulders are. So beyond just rowing and just having the shoulders move from a twisting perspective, they can also move side to side as well. So there's just a ton of different movement you can get. And I just really want to encourage people with very lightweight, just to explore and just to try things out, because you're going to be surprised at how much stability. There's a lot of rotation going on, a lot of anti-rotation going on, and you're going to be shocked and surprised how much it feels probably similar to some sports that you played when you were young. You're going to be able to connect it to golf. You're going to be able to connect it to tennis or baseball or whatever some of those things were that you did when you were young.
Yeah.
Whoa.
This right here, actually, this is another thing that I've been toying with a lot. Like this is a hamstring curl on the lower back extension, but I'm trying to get the deepest range of motion possible on that hamstring by reaching my torso kind of underneath me. And initially, I wasn't able to use any weight on this, but now I'm progressing the weight pretty well, and I'm really strengthening my hamstring in that super long position. And then if you go to the next story,
it's kind of mimicking almost like running, it looks like a little bit.
This is something that Mark did yesterday. So this can't be seen, but there's a band and a cable, and we're kind of like creating force to the other side of the body and having to stop that force when he gets to the other side. So there's a lot of cool things that I think that what happens with normal bodybuilding training and powerlifting style training, not that they're bad, but especially when I hear guys who are like super into biomechanics talk about it, they're like, the efficient way to move the lat is through here, and there's no reason to go into this deeper range of motion. Same thing with your shoulder. If you go here with a lateral raise, that's going to be damaging to the shoulder. But what you do is you train the body to only be strong and only be able to function well within those very limited ranges of motion. Then what happens when you go out of those ranges of motion? What happens when you go into these?
Might not feel so good.
Might not feel so good. You might pull something. You might tear something. Why? Because you're not weak. I mean, you're not strong through those ranges of motion. So one thing that we've been messing with is yesterday we were fucking around with having the shoulder protracted while doing chest flies in this position. So rather than being locked in here, which is the safest way and most stable way for your shoulder, protract your shoulder and see what happens.
It's the opposite of safe.
It's the opposite of safe. But one thing that we're finding is like our whole trap, lat area, all of that was opening up as we were doing it. And yes, we were using very light weight, but it's something that can be progressed. And it's something that can turn a weak range of motion into a strong range of motion. And lastly, athletically, this is where it gets really fun. Pat Project family, I hope you guys are enjoying this bite. Did you know that cocaine increases your dopamine levels by 2.5 times above baseline?
Okay.
Why is this important?
Why is this important, Nsima?
Because, a really cool thing that we learned from Andrew Huberman is that getting yourself into cold water or cold water exposure, like the cold plunge, does the same thing.
What?
2.5 times above baseline. And you have those sustained dopamine levels for up to 4 or 5 hours after cold exposure. This is why we love cold plunging so much. I cannot say this enough. It has been one of the best additions to our daily routines. If you can't already, just take cold showers. But if you want to take to the next level, get the cold plunge. And Andrew, how can they do it?
You guys got to head over to thecoldplunge.com and at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save $150 off. I keep saying it. I'm going to keep saying it till I'm blue in the face and not blue from the cold, blue from holding my breath. This has been the absolute best thing I've ever done for my mental health. Like I said, I can't say it enough. So again, thecoldplunge.com, promo code PowerProject, links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Let's get back to this podcast.
If someone throws a punch, they don't throw a punch right here and keep their fucking shoulder connected to their lat, right? They throw a punch and they get long, right? So how about you develop strength out in those long positions?
They even talk about using your arm as like a whip.
Yes.
Getting that kind of whip factor at the end.
Right?
The Diaz brothers are fucking amazing at that. They pepper people with these shots where you're like, those don't look that crazy, but they fucking hurt really bad because they're able to get a little snapping at the end of it.
And this is why I see why people say most muscle-bound people don't move well, and most muscle-bound people are tight. Why? Because the way that muscle-bound lifters lift is tight. Everything's right here. All the pressing, all the lateral raises, all right here. That's where you stay. So now your muscles don't have the ability to do anything overhead. You don't have the ability to move your hands behind you.
You don't even have the ability to do stuff that your average person can do.
Exactly.
And you're not trying to be average. You're trying to be the opposite of that, right? You're trying to be way above average, trying to be unique, trying to be different. And now you are like, you had all this like function, but now you've become like dysfunctional. And I'm not saying it happens to all, because if people will be like, oh, what about this guy? It's not everybody. There's a lot of people that have kept their integrity of their body over a long period of time, but it takes a lot of thought. It sometimes even takes some luck. And there's some people that have stayed attached to their sport or have introduced new sport as they moved forward.
Yes. But, the wild thing, though, is the stuff that we've been doing this year and messing around with. I wasn't moving as good as I was doing a lot of mobility stuff, but I haven't been moving as well as I've been moving better now than I was in the past because of doing some of these weird things with the lifts. Andrew, could you pull up one more thing from my Instagram, please? It's a black and white video with the row. And this is just kind of another example right there. This is another example of kind of what we're talking about. With most cable rows, most people are just chilling. Actually, just play the audio if you can, because the audio will explain it better.
That guy's jacked.
Arm extended as long as it can. I turn in towards the arm to get an extra stretch in the lat.
Turn in.
Then pulling with my elbow, I row. Back into the longest range of motion.
And the thing is, you could also just visually see what's happening with the lat. Like most people are going to keep the lat there, but if you allow yourself,
you have to lighten the load, right?
And you could pause the audio there.
That you can.
The lat is also going to take your shoulders from being kind of straight across to you being able to lean one shoulder down towards a hip, and your lat is part of that. Like your obliques are part of that. But when you flex your lat, you can actually feel yourself getting pulled to that position. And like, how often is that like actually trained or focused on in the gym? I would say like really, really rare, unless you're somebody that has been studying this and been paying a lot of attention to it. I guess you could say some people have figured it out when they do a one-arm dumbbell row and they bring the weight back over the hip. That kind of does that a little bit. But I don't think people are like consciously really thinking. And if you're thinking about like, if I want to be able to move side to side and move in different planes, then I need to be able to fire certain muscles certain ways to be able to do that. Like if someone's going to just like reach up overhead for something and they're trying to get something that's up real high. You can get up on your toes and put your arm up and stuff like that. And you're going to be limited at how high you can push your arm. But if you take your other shoulder and you flex your lat, you'll be able to go up that much higher. Like you'll be able to go way higher if you can kind of. So these are just a lot of things that I think they're not commonly thought about, but they're things that I've been diving into and Nsima's been diving into more recently. And I think it can make a big difference in your training and make a big difference in how you function outside the gym.
Yeah. And if you're an athlete that has muscle, right, just adjust some of the ways you're doing some of your lifts. Lighten the load, because one reason why people don't do a lot of this stuff is because the weight that you're going to be using initially is going to be very light. You're not going to be very strong in those ranges. You're going to be weak in those ranges because you don't train them. So you need to lighten the load, and you need to go into those long ranges and see how your body handles it. Let your body stretch into those ranges, because as has been happening for me, I've been able to progress a lot of these movements. And now I'm able to move some pretty decent load in disadvantageous positions, or positions that some people would call biomechanically inefficient.
Hey, I know you guys enjoyed the video, so like, comment, subscribe, and head to the Power Project Discord below. Talk to y'all later.